Good evening, Tom. Yeah. So Moscow put forward this sort of almost an ultimatum of demands earlier this week, essentially demanding a sort of a radical contraction in NATO activity in Eastern Europe. They actually wanted to withdraw to the sort of the 1997 extraordinarily status quo before Eastern European states were admitted to NATO, and with a new regime on sort of regulation of NATO deployments in the region. But I think critically, and this is the issue that came up again and again today, was that Russia wants a security guarantee specifically relevant to Ukraine. It wants an agreement that Ukraine will never join NATO. And this is really the issue that we saw Putin coming back to again and again today in his press conference. He would on occasion be speaking in really quite emotional, really quite affected terms about the Ukrainian issue. And I think it was very clear today that he cares enormously about this. So, there's been an opinion sort of advanced that this tranche of demands were very much a sort of an opening gambit for Putin to try and secure a more sort of specific agreement, specifically concerning Ukraine. And I think that seems quite plausible today. It's very unlikely that NATO or the US will agree to these sweeping restrictions on freedom of movement in Eastern Europe, but it's probably more likely, at least from the point of view of the Kremlin, that they will agree to rein back their support for Ukraine a little bit. And I think that's sort of the Putin we saw today, one who was really holding out for negotiation with Washington, and actually on occasion seemed rather optimistic that negotiations would take place and that they might be successful for Russia.
And what's the sort of overall feeling there in Moscow? What's the mood? Does it feel like you're in a country that's gearing up for war with the West?
Yeah, in general, I think there's very limited kind of organic demand for or interest in war. Certainly, one rarely encounters anyone who sort of looks at the prospect with anything other than sort of trepidation. And I think polling data bears this out. Russians on the street do not want war. It's frankly the last thing they're interested in. The political agenda right now is very focused on things like bread and butter issues, like inflation. And we saw these kind of issues coming up a lot in Putin's press conference today. However, what I think we have seen, certainly in the last week, is a sort of appreciable ratcheting up of the rhetoric on state TV, the rhetoric from sort of officials. We saw Putin yesterday at a meeting at the defense ministry saying some quite blood-curdling things about Ukraine. So I think it's very possible. And I think Russian sort of opinion is responding to that. We have seen in the polls sort of a rise, not in the number of people who want war, but the number of people who sort of imagine that war is a possibility. And so I think, we're in a country that's sort of, if not sort of craving conflict, then at least preparing for one as a possibility in the near future.
Okay, well, thank you.